Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So I would like to address the Quranist claim that chapter 45, verse 6 means to only follow the Quran. So I will recite this verse. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. These are the ayati, so verses or signs of Allah we recite to you in truth. Then in what hadith after Allah and his verses will they believe? So the word hadith appears in this verse when Allah is questioning, then in what hadith after Allah and his signs or verses will they believe? So hadith simply just means statements, discourse, sayings, so on and so forth, right? So the Quran alone claim that this verse is only saying to follow the Quran and not to follow the hadith, negates hadith. This is incorrect because nowhere in this verse does the word Quran appear. In the Arabic, this verse reads, Tilka ayatu illahi natluha alayka bilhaqi fabi ayyi hadithin bada ilahi wa ayatihi yuminun. So that's how this verse reads. The word Quran does not appear. So to assert that this verse is telling you to only follow the Quran and not take from traditions or outside of it, like as a Shia, what we do, you would have to basically say that you would have to insert the word Quran in this verse, right? So how come Allah is saying these are the verses and signs of Allah? How come he's not saying this is the Quran which Allah recites to you in truth if he wants you to only follow the Quran, right? So it's a big assumption to make. And effectively what you've done is that you've strayed away from your own position. Because as Quran alone, you are fundamentally only to follow the Quran. You cannot insert your own words into these verses. You cannot enforce your own ideas upon the revealed Quran, right? So you can't be like, yeah, this verse only means to follow the Quran alone. It doesn't. That's assuming that the verses or signs that Allah is speaking of in this verse are only within the Quran and not within other traditions, right? So that's a very irresponsible assumption to make. You know, nowhere does it say to only follow the Quran alone. Nowhere does that say to not take from hadith. It just says don't take from hadith that is not sanctioned by Allah. You see? So what people do in this Quran alone movement, they get tunnel vision. And basically they're cut off from the esoteric mysteries. You know, if you do not accept the walaya of the Imams alayhi salam, you have just negated the whole esoteric current. You know, you've negated the whole esoteric current, which completes it completes your deen essentially. So that's what I will say on this. I'd also like to say that tilka ayatu ilahi natluhu tilka ayatu ilahi natluha. This does not necessarily even mean to recite. It can also mean to convey. So this verse can also read, these are the signs, right? These are the signs of Allah which we convey to you in truth. Then in what hadith after Allah, so in what sayings, discourses, statements after Allah and his signs will they believe? So this could be referring to signs as well. If we back up and we look at the verses prior to this, Allah is telling us actually to observe signs. So the word ayat is appearing, but to observe signs. So indeed within the heavens and the earth are signs for the believers, right? So in the outer, right, and in the earth within us is signs for the believers. Right? So this is telling you to be aware of the inner and outer, right? Now we go to 45:4. And in the creation of yourselves and what he disperses of moving creatures are signs for the people who are certain in faith. Ayati, again, the word ayati appears. Right? So indeed within the heavens and the earth are ayati, signs for the believers, 45:4. And in the creation of yourselves and what he disperses of moving creatures are ayati, signs for people who are certain in faith, 45:5. And in the alternation of night and day, when Allah sends down from the sky of provision and gives life thereby on the earth after its lifelessness, in his directing of the winds are signs for a people who reason. So the word ayati appears. Now 45:6, all of a sudden we see these are the verses of Allah which we recite to you in truth. It would make more sense if these are the signs of Allah which we convey to you in truth. Then in what hadith after Allah and his signs will they believe? Right? So you could read this verse like this because it's speaking of ayati found within us and around us in the previous verses. So I wanted to, address these assumptions. So effectively, what happens is that the Quran alone person needs to say that this verse here, right, is telling you to only follow the Quran, right, with the assumption that there is no statements or no hadith outside of the Quran that is divine for religious guidance, to follow for religious guidance. So that's an assumption. So they've effectively dismantled their own position because they've created their own hadith or tafsir on this verse, thus nullifying the Quran alone position. Al-Haq wal nur.